Don't rush to believe the Buddha's words. Hello everyone, we have discussed a rather controversial practice, the twin yoga practice of Tibetan Tantra. I hope that in today's video, we won't focus on the question of right or wrong. Instead, please open your mind and maintain a relaxed attitude as we take a comprehensive look at Vajrayana and see how experts comment on this religion. Recently, a Buddha statue in Thailand faced backlash online for being depicted in a way that was deemed too sexual. A naked woman is shown sitting in the Buddha's lap with her arms wrapped around him. This portrayal immediately sparked outrage, with many people feeling that Buddhism had been disrespected, causing great anger among Thai Buddhists. Furthermore, many Vietnamese internet users also expressed their dissatisfaction with the image. The Bangkok Post quoted one netizen calling the sculptor a demon who wanted to tarnish the Buddha's reputation. A Facebook user even urged Thai authorities to intervene diplomatically to destroy the statue. Tibetan Buddhism, which follows the Vajrayana path, was historically practiced in secrecy in remote mountains and forests, with masters who lived in complete isolation, having no communication with the outside world. However, in the modern age, with 21st century media, Tantra has become widely known through various sources. In a previous video discussing the twin yoga practice, I also noticed that many young people are interested in Tantra. However, it's important to recognize that many people misunderstand Tantra, and the main reason is the lack of complete and accurate information. First and foremost, we need to understand that to become a Vajrayana practitioner, one must undergo many practices to purify the body, speech, and mind, eventually transforming them into the body, speech, and mind of a Buddha. On the path to purifying the soul, to become the Dharma body of the Buddha, one must experience tantric practices under the direct guidance of a teacher, much like how a doctor adjusts or increases a treatment plan for a patient. This practice is also known as Vajrayana or Tantric Buddhism. Vajrayana has 4 distinctive characteristics. 1. The yoga of purifying the surrounding environment thoroughly. 2. The yoga of purifying and manifesting one's divine appearance. 3. The yoga of purifying all sensations deeply. 4. The yoga of purifying all actions thoroughly. Any teaching that contains these 4 essences is considered Vajrayana. Thus, it is clear that Tibetan Buddhism, or Vajrayana, does not lead practitioners down a path of indulgence in sensual desires, which is often associated with human life. So, what is the significance of Buddha statues sitting on lotus flowers, embracing a woman? Do these images offend other sects or the global Buddhist community? After 500 years since the Buddha's parinirvana, we see that the structure of relationships and karma includes a structure of the mental continuum that has become extremely narrow. Therefore, each practitioner's personal journey toward liberation and enlightenment has become more difficult. As such, Vajrayana uses everything a person possesses in their mind to make progress on the path to liberation. A famous Lama once said, "When a person falls to the ground, they must rely on the ground to stand up." This emphasizes the skillful means and techniques of Vajrayana. Most debates revolve around the practice of Yabgyum, or the twin yoga practice, where a Buddha is depicted embracing a female deity. Many Buddhists have considered this inappropriate, believing it contradicts the Buddhist teachings and represents a form of degeneration. More seriously, some Vajrayana teachers have even been accused of spiritual abuse for misinterpreting or misusing this practice. And yet, all sentient beings in the desire realm are composed of coarse material substances, and desire is always present. However, for beings in the form realm and higher, including the formless realm, desire no longer exists. Why? Simply because the material substance that forms their bodies has become much subtler and lighter compared to the material substance of ordinary human bodies. I am endlessly inspired in expressing thoughts that flow through the deepest corners of the mind. They have been expressed externally through drawings or sculpted into statues. The ultimate goal is to show us that in order to transform the delusions of the 5 aggregates and the defiled world, one must overcome the arduous trial of desire. The Buddha taught that the greatest flaw of sentient beings is attachment. Day and night, they live in attachment, unable to let go. If one can transform their desire for sensual pleasure into the desire to diligently study the Dharma without forgetting the practice for even a moment, they will quickly attain Buddhahood. This Dharma body is extremely subtle and pure, containing not even a trace of sensual pleasure. The level of purity and subtlety of the Bodhisattva's bodies is far more refined and pure than even the beings of the formless realm. Therefore, the divine images of deities depicted in union are entirely free from any trace of sensual desire. Typically, we have the habit of viewing Buddha statues with the eyes of an ordinary human being. It is completely wrong to say that this male deity is engaging in intercourse with that female deity. But if you view the statue through the perspective of someone who meditates, you will see it entirely differently. The Buddha in the statue is in a complete meditative posture, not paying any attention to the woman in the statue. The woman and the posture that appears to suggest sexual union are merely depictions of the blissful state of meditation. Those who have experienced meditation and entered deep concentration will understand the joy of meditation, when the hormones that create euphoria are released after the body reaches a state of total relaxation. Additionally, this is a warning for all sentient beings to understand that on the path of practice, we are still heavily influenced by past karma. Deep in the mind, there remains attachment that has not yet been fully eradicated, as the transformation of consciousness into wisdom has not yet occurred. This is a way to express the mind externally. Instead of avoiding it, we face it to resolve it, prescribing the correct remedy for the illness. It is this attachment that keeps us bound in the cycle of samsara. A German professor specializing in Tibetan Buddhism, with 35 years of research and many works on Tantra, commented on the Yab-Yum statue, also known as the Father-Mother, which is common in Tantric Buddhism, as follows. According to Professor Andrea, the term Yab-Yum comes from Tibet and simply means Father-Mother. It is a term often used to describe the Buddha and various other Buddhas in a unified posture. The Sanskrit term for Yab-Yum is Yuganada, which means unification, and is associated with the concept of yoga. The Sanskrit term yoga itself means yoke, and refers to the well-known spiritual practice of India, which Buddhism also adopted to train the mind, much like a yoke that guides oxen pulling a plow or a cart. Therefore, the term Yuganada clarifies the fact that the Yab-Yum image symbolizes a religious practice aimed not at sexual indulgence or anything similar, but at a specific method of meditation. This method is different from other forms of yoga, as it uses vital energies that go beyond sexual instincts. At first glance, it may seem illogical that a physical representation of union symbolizes a religious practice aimed at mental training. However, there are two reasons why this symbol was chosen. 1. In practice, Vajrayana can be performed with a partner, but it is primarily practiced individually through visualization. Today, most people around the world who practice this form of meditation are monks or nuns. Some may practice it with their spouse, but even these individuals do not focus on sexual instincts more than others. Number 2. One of the main reasons for using erotic symbolism in Vajrayana meditation is that this religion was influenced by a transgressive Chinese tradition. However, no matter where it is practiced in the world, it ultimately aims to achieve the inner mystical experience of union and oneness. Theistic religions refer to this as the union between the divine and the human. In Hinduism, it is the union of the individual soul, Atman, with the universal soul, Brahman. Vajrayana Buddhism speaks of the union between wisdom and emptiness, or wisdom and compassion. Objectively, sexual activity clearly represents the most non-religious form of union that humans can experience. The founders of Vajrayana Buddhism saw this as the most appropriate symbol for what happens in the mystical union of the spirit. This is perhaps the most controversial reason for developing the idea and creating an image of the Buddha in a sexual posture. Simply put, Tantra states that overcoming sexual desire is the most challenging thing for humans. If, through practice, one can overcome the desire for sensual pleasure, it means they have succeeded. A few years ago, when asked about the presence of sexual images in daily Tibetan Buddhist practice, a Lama was questioned whether there were any great Tibetan masters qualified to teach the twin yoga practice of Vajrayana. He simply said, no. With this analysis, I hope that those who harbor negative feelings toward the twin yoga practice may adopt a different perspective and gain a deeper understanding of this practice specifically and Vajrayana in general. You know, a great master once said this about me: you should not be quick to believe in the Buddha, because perhaps even the Buddha himself did not want us to believe immediately, to believe quickly, or to have blind faith in him. A faith based on emotion, a faith that follows the masses, a faith like a conditioned reflex can easily damage the teachings that the Buddha worked so hard to establish. When I was around 7 or 8 years old, I followed my grandmother to the temple, and those temples, with all their solemnity and mystery, captivated me greatly. When my grandmother knelt down, clasped her hands, and bowed, I was also taught to do the same. Strange feelings of awe and reverence would arise in my heart after each clasp of the hands and each bow. Everything continued like that until I turned 20. After a strange dream, and after all the thoughts accumulated during my youth about the hand clasping and bowing every time I entered a temple, I started to wonder, why do I have to kneel and bow like that? Why do I have to believe in the mysterious magical powers coming from statues on the altar? Why should I believe just because my grandmother believed, my parents believed, and everyone around me believed? Why should I believe just because it has become a habitual faith, a reflexive faith that has followed me since childhood? I brought all these questions to a monk at a temple in the heart of Hanoi. The monk explained to me that religion is ultimately built on the foundation of faith. With faith comes goodness, with faith comes peace, and with faith comes liberation. That answer both satisfied and did not satisfy me. It satisfied me in that, from a principle perspective, it is true that all religions and beliefs in this life are built on the foundation of faith. Some indigenous beliefs hold unconditional faith, but based on my research at that time, I realized that all major religions have their own worldview, a perspective on life, and a foundation of reasoning. If we ignore these foundational principles and believe immediately and impulsively, it is possible that faith could lead us astray. While reading Buddhist scriptures, I suddenly realized that even the Buddha once addressed this issue. In the Kalama Sutta, one of the most famous and insightful suttas, a story is told. Once, the Buddha passed through the land of the Kalamas, and the young people of the Kalamas ran up to him and asked, "Teacher, every ascetic who passes through here claims that their teaching is the true doctrine. As a result, we are confused and don't know whom to believe." The Buddha's answer was, "Do not hastily believe in anything, even if it is written in the scriptures. Do not hastily believe in anything, even if it is spoken by renowned teachers." The young men of the Kalamas still did not fully understand, so the Buddha elaborated further. With everything that is taught by others, you must use your mind to reflect, investigate, and critique it. Then apply it to your daily life. See if it helps you to free yourself from suffering. If it does, then believe. The Buddha's answer leads us to the conclusion that we should not even believe in the Buddha himself or his teachings immediately. Instead, we should first reflect on them, investigate them, and test them in our lives. Amida Buddha. I don't know if that understanding is harsh or misguided, and so I began reading more Buddhist texts and started testing what I read in my life. Yet, even after reading and experimenting, I still did not believe immediately. There was a long period when I would visit temples to seek some peace amidst the stress that life brings. But I no longer clasped my hands and bowed to the Buddha statues as I used to. I thought, according to the spirit of the Kalama Sutta, if I had not yet fully investigated and established a complete belief in the Buddha's teachings, and I still clasped my hands and bowed to the Buddha, perhaps even the Buddha himself would not be pleased. Of course, even though I didn't clasp my hands and bow, I still maintained the necessary respect that any humble being should have for a great figure in human history. By the second year of university, I started exploring the concept of independent thinking through Western philosophy books. Strangely, the moment of my deepest realization about the concept of independent thinking was also the moment I admired and trusted the teachings of the Buddha more than ever before. From that point on, I've held the belief that the Buddha, through his life and teachings, provides the clearest evidence and the greatest lessons on what the Western world calls independent thinking. Born in a splendid royal palace, the future king was imbued with the typical mindset of a privileged prince, prepared for nearly 20 years to become a ruler one day. However, Prince Siddhartha, the future enlightened one, decisively chose to leave behind the regal life of a prince, to escape the environment he grew up in, and to break free from the ideologies he had been taught. He accepted the risk of walking a different path, a path unlike the one laid out for him. This decision was the wise response of an independent thinker, one who would go on to create a unique path of practice, a path that had never been seen before, the middle way. After attaining enlightenment, Shakyamuni Buddha shared with us teachings that continued to demonstrate his profound independence from the dominant Hindu traditions of the time. If Hinduism taught that everything in the universe was created by gods, the Buddha taught that there were no mystical gods. All things arise and cease due to conditions. The concept of conditions, or dependent origination, is perhaps one of the clearest expressions of independent thought, and one of the most modern and dialectical concepts in the Buddha's teachings. In the Upanishads, the core philosophical texts of Hinduism, the fate of a person in this life is determined by the actions of their previous life, known as karma. This principle is often expressed as you sow, so shall you reap. If one planted bad seeds in a previous life, they would inevitably suffer bad consequences in this one. Such a viewpoint places people in a passive relationship with their fate, as they cannot determine their own destiny. But Shakyamuni Buddha inserted the concept of conditions between karma and its results, giving people the power to be proactive. This idea of conditions enables individuals to shape their own lives in the present, rather than being passively bound to their past actions. Even if one created bad karma in the past, by creating good conditions in the present, they could transform that bad karma or even purify it to create good outcomes. Clearly, in the intellectual landscape of ancient India, while pre-Buddhist religions emphasized fate and the deterministic view of karma as dictated by gods, Buddhism set itself apart with its view that everything depends on one's own actions. If pre-Buddhist religions were theistic and deterministic, Buddhism is deeply dialectical. This shows that the Buddha was, in fact, quite modern. For me, the greatest lesson the Buddha left behind is the lesson of independent action, independent thinking, and independent contemplation. Now, every time I enter a temple, I clasp my hands and bow before the Buddha with the greatest reverence. In such moments, I feel as though the great figure on the high altar is smiling at me, reminding me to view all phenomena in life with an independent mind, even if those phenomena have been established as the highest truths. I hope you found this story, which I collected from a follower of Buddhism, insightful. What do you think about this perspective? Please leave your comments below the video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.